This is Jim Horn with our continuing Black and White Photography Master Series. Dr. Robert Anderson is a retired physician with over 50 years of experience in practicing and teaching internal medicine alongside conducting biomedical research. He owned and operated a gallery featuring contemporary photography, first in New York City and later in Denver, Colorado, that showcased the work of several nationally known photographers. For a period spanning nearly 5 decades, he has created several bodies of his own photographic work. He has had the good fortune to having some of this work shown in selected galleries and exhibits throughout the U.S. and appearing in nationally prominent photography publications. He has published 5 books of photography. Currently, he divides his time between Denver, Colorado, and a small farm located in the heart of south central Nebraska, allowing him to embrace a tranquil, rural environment while staying connected to a vibrant art scene. Hey, Robert, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Oh, we're doing well. We're doing well here. We're in Michigan, and you're in California?
Denver, Colorado.
Oh, you're in Denver. Okay, I noticed. When I was talking to you on the, or when I was giving the bio, it said you've got a place in Nebraska. Do you still have that place in Nebraska?
Sure do.
Oh, super.
Nebraska soon.
You're going to go back there soon.
No, some of the images.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got to tell you, I think the audience are gonna love the images. I went back a little bit in history, and I looked at some of the other great photographers, and the one that came across was, I'm going to screw up his name because he's Hungarian, I believe, Brassai, Brassai.
Yes.
And he has that same moodiness in his photographs that you've got, and yours are different. His are a lot of street scenes. But so without further ado, as they say in the business, why don't we go ahead and start taking a look at these images?
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, when I looked at this image, Robert, I looked over there, and I think what really makes it, for me anyway, what makes this image is it's got to be a blackbird or some kind of bird there. And I think it just sets the scene. Why don't you talk a little bit about this image?
So this is a scene in remote rural Nebraska. The snow had just stopped flying. It was what the weathermen call a polar vortex, and that means cold Arctic air. And this is at a farm looking out at the trees, and you can see in the upper right of the image a large bird, which is a golden eagle.
Oh, that's okay. Super.
Some eagles in Nebraska, not many. And this one's a little further east and south of what they usually are. And it's hard to see on the image, but below the eagle are some black specks, which are about 30 or 40 blackbirds, which periodically harass the eagle. So this is a bitterly cold morning, looking out from the back of our farmhouse into what I thought was a unique scene.
And it is a unique scene. I, as far as whether it's an eagle or not, I just think the bird represents something sort of moody. It reminds me the vulture sitting in the tree waiting for. But if we look at some of the other shots, I think the viewers are going to get the impression here that there's a genre here that's going on. Why don't you talk about this photo?
So this is every morning out on the farm. So these are all Nebraska, and finding things to photograph in rural, remote Nebraska is an interesting challenge / opportunity. So I'm out walking. I usually get up about an hour before sunrise, and I'm out walking in an eastern pasture on top of a hill, and the sun has just come over and lights up these trees, and you can see the rays. This is early spring, beautiful morning, moderate temperature, birds are chirping, peaceful, quiet, just a good time to be outdoors.
So, for all those young photographers listening in that don't want to get up early in the morning, look what you're missing. I mean, the sun, the rays coming through there. It's just, it's a sense of being. It, yeah. What do you do? Is it, in Nebraska? I mean, it can get pretty cold as it does here in Michigan. Any special attire? I mean, other than the fact that you're up early in the morning and you're walking around, huh?
No, this wasn't too cold. No, the one you saw before, that polar vortex, that was maybe 10, 15 degrees below zero. And I photographed a lot in Yellowstone in February and March. There, where it gets down 20, 30 and you're out, you got to really take care with the batteries in your camera, and, have it inside your coat and not leave it out very long. But this the trick here with the light and the fog and the mist is uh, getting the right exposure, and you don't know
Yes.
whether and to get you can't see the detail, but in the image on those trees, you got very fine detail of the tiny branches and things, and to get the detail and the right exposure can be tricky. So sometimes you have to take three or four at different exposures to hit it just right. But the weather isn't a problem here.
So for all the what I call the camera nerds, they think the camera obviously takes the picture, but it's Robert's eye that sees the photo. I guess that's probably
Yeah.
what kind of camera do you use, Robert?
Well, this was a Sony RX 10 version 4. It has a good telephoto on it. And the problems that I've experienced, at least with telephotos, if they're very long, sometimes they lose sharpness. But this maintains sharpness even out to, say, 400 millimeters. So that's a good all around camera. And when I'm in the city and on the streets, I do a lot of photography in New York City. I use a very small Leica, the Deluxe
Oh,
7. And
oh yeah.
it's a great carry around camera. You don't want to the Sony RX10's a little larger and heavier and a little bulkier and makes you look a little more obvious when you're trying to get some good subtle street photography.
Thinking about the street photography, what I'm amazed at today, I did a little book, probably started about 10 or 12 years ago, and we spent a lot of time over in Paris. And so I got the idea of taking a lot of photographs of people taking photographs of Paris with their cameras and so forth, and they get in all these unusual positions. Today, what I find unusual, and you probably have seen it too, and maybe in New York, is that if you bring out a regular camera, it sort of startles people because everybody's so used to using their iPhone. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the camera is some kind of weapon sometimes. I
Yeah.
was going to ask you, and it's a question I usually ask most of the presenters. What do you do? I mean, where do you process your photo, Lightroom, RAW, or whatever? And generally speaking, not specifically, but generally, what is your workflow process?
Well, usually, so I photograph every day, almost 365 days a year. I photograph when I'm out walking the dog or running errands. And I usually download everything that evening. And I download it now into Lightroom Classic. Probably delete 85% of what I've shot. It's all right, but it's just not something that I particularly like. And I don't do much manipulation. Maybe a little bit of Photoshop with curves, but not much else. And then the keepers I'll put in collections in Lightroom Classic. And so I've been doing this for 45 years or so. So I've got a huge backlog and maybe, I'd say 100 different series. And I keep those in a desktop that's got several terabytes and that are easily findable. So that's what I do. And sometimes even using collections, I have a hard time when
Yeah, you got a lot of photos.
I spend a lot of time scrolling through trying to find something I know's got to be there somewhere.
One of the reoccurring things or themes on processing, post editing that I've run into here on the group of photographers, or yourself included, there is not a lot of post editing that goes on. You would think, I know some people that sit in front of that computer and will tweak and twist and do everything else, but the master series photographers I found, at least, and I'd almost say it's 100%, they do not do a lot of post processing. It seems to me they're more involved in taking the photograph and making sure they get the good photograph. The one they don't want, as you suggested, you throw into the digital never world, and it goes on from there. So that's very, very interesting. Here's a great shot. I love this. I love this.
We're not in Nebraska anymore.
Okay, tell us about this shot.
Napa Valley, California.
Ah.
And again, up early in the morning, driving around, and I got lost. I mean, it was dense fog everywhere, and I made some twists and turns, and my partner's in bed waiting for me to bring back breakfast while I'm out there trying to get some images, and I wasn't paying attention to, I'm just chasing a good image, and you can't drive and Google where you're going. So I looked up ahead and I saw this, and there was a little turnoff, and I saw a sign you can see way down the sort of lower left. And I thought, well, I'm going to stop and take a couple images here, and then go down and see if that sign tell me where I am, so I can get back to the hotel. But the sign wasn't helpful, but the image turned out pretty good. And it's hard when you're photographing dense fog to get the exposure right, and then you never get something tack sharp, so you don't really know how good the focus is till you get back and look at it on the big screen.
Yeah, and look how it goes from sharp and it goes all the way down to out of focus. And this is what you would call serendipity. Just you bump into something and it just comes out beautifully.
Yeah, I took, just for exact reasons you just said, I probably took 3 or 4 of these images here, a little different exposure, a little different focus, and then found one that I liked.
My wife always is concerned when I see a great photograph, or what I think is a great photograph. I sort of stop the car, providing it isn't on a super highway or someplace, and jump out and take the photograph. It's if you don't take it, it's gone. It probably will never be there again.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah. Okay. In somewhat of the same kind of moodiness, was this taken? Describe it. I won't even guess.
So we're back in Nebraska. This is our little farm in a remote area. Early in the morning, before the sun is up, and the fog is moving in. And the fog's coming in layers, and it's outlining a little hill in the distance and some trees in the valley. And I'm sitting up on a little hill watching this, and it was it's a great scene of nature, quiet, peaceful, and again, it's always a matter of exposure and and focus when you're dealing with fog. But the fog and the environment are something you can find in a small farm in Nebraska to photograph.
Now, was this one of your earlier morning shots?
Yes, before the sun's up. And when the sun came up, it sort of took away a lot of the mysterious qualities, and it began to sharpen up and burn off the fog a little bit. So the best was before. So you're taking these in low light, and I got to confess, I've gotten sloppy with digital, and I don't use my tripod as much as I should. This is handheld with a fair amount of ISO, but you don't get a lot of grain even when this is printed up pretty large. And you can't see it very well here, but at that ridge at the top, there's a little bump in the center, and then far to the left, a little bump to the left. Those are 2 Angus cows sitting out there on the ridge.
Ah, okay. Well, it's a great image, and I love your technique and taking your camera with you all the time, and obviously you're able to get shots like this. You're right about. I think the digital has made us sloppy. I've gone back to some film, and using a tripod to make sure I slow down, and yeah, digital is just. Everybody thinks now in digital, let's do it in post. And you and I, when we were doing analog, we knew we had to get it right when we were shooting it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do a lot of post, but post won't take a mediocre or bad image and make it good.
Very true. Okay.
So this
Talk to us about this image. Well, this ought to be in some horror movie.
yeah, Stephen King is like this. So this is in the little farm we have in Nebraska. It's riparian, and it's got a year-round creek that runs through it. It's called Medicine Creek, so we name our place Medicine Creek Farm. And along that creek, there are some beaver. And so the beaver in the winter, when they don't have anything to eat, they come out and chew the bark off the trees, and they ring the trees so the trees die when they're near the creek. So you got a lot of these tree skeletons along the creek. So this is, again, a foggy morning. I'm out walking with the camera, walking the dog, and along the creek, and I got a lot of interesting images with the haze and the fog as the sun was coming up, and sort of silhouette them with one of these trees.
Oh, it's just you got to be there, folks. If you're listening to this in the podcast, flip over to the YouTube video. It's a great shot, and I think Robert is right. Stephen King would love this. He'd probably superimpose some big old vulture on there, which you really don't need because it just yeah, it is. It's great. Well, Robert, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's really I think it's important for other photographers, and we call ourselves amateurs, but I really wonder if that's an appropriate term when I see all the photographs, not only from yourself, but also from the the other master photography series. These are as good as the historically significant photographers do, in my opinion. This is great stuff. If you had done this stuff 100 years ago, we'd probably be celebrating your right. But the tradition continues with really, really great stuff. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, my pleasure, and I'm very grateful and appreciative of you having me on. And I enjoy watching your podcasts.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. And you take care of yourself and have a great rest of the week. And I know you're going to be out with your camera in the morning, aren't you?
Yeah, water lilies. All right, take care, Jim, and thank you.